So in StreamYard, Bill, did you go to settings on the bottom and click on audio to see if you have an option for the microphone? Hi.
St. Louis family is kicking in.
All right.
Malcolm family, Philistine, yes. We see you, Duchess.
So, Bill, the settings in StreamYard audio didn't work. You didn't have the option. You click on audio, option there for the mic. You can finish mic option. If you unplug the headphones from the computer, that makes it So Bill, you can hear me, right? You can hear me. Zayden, you can hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
All right. So, Zaid, is there anything on your end, since you are the key person, anything on your end that you can do with
I tried, I did everything I could, but there's nothing on our end.
Okay.
All the little.
One.
So, Bill, can you hear me? Say something. Let me get this on.
I think I want to go to the intro. Here we go. Let's go to the intro. It's in the
I hear
chat.
Bill's typing, so I assume there's audio, unless that's somebody else typing.
Bill, you hear us okay?
I hear you, Bill. Can you hear me?
He can't hear, no, he can't hear us. Oh, man.
Interesting.
That's just we're really stuck.
We hear you, Bill.
Tell him, let's take him out. All right. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and enemies. Welcome to Revolutionary Fourth Sundays. We apologize for the technical difficulties. We thought we had it figured out. By way of introduction, I am Zaid Muhammad. I'm now the lead organizer for the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee, now in our 32nd year of work. Just by way of introduction, we began back in 1993 under the leadership of the late Herman Ferguson and some of his comrades from the OAAU, who included the late great Yuri Kochiyama, Butch Gladstone, Gene Reynolds, Earl Grant, and several others. I was one of them. Sam Anderson. Sam, you were with us at the very beginning, right?
Right.
The late Joan Gibbs, Mike X, Omar Shabazz, and I'm going to come to Omar. We're going to figure out something to do with Omar because we're trying to develop a film festival arm to the organization. We hit a wall last year with an issue with the banks. We were literally ejected from our bank because the banks changed rules around community-based organizations, and that it disabled us from being able to get back to our legendary freedom fighters annual dinner. We're determined to get back to that this year one way or another. But we've got a lot of touch points that we're going to try and do. We'll grow into Newark, New Jersey. We're going to have book signings and film festival screenings in Newark, New Jersey this year. When we come back to New York, we will definitely do the dinner sometime this year. This year is also the Centennial Patrice Lumumba and France Fanon. So we're contemplating something that we're trying to pull together in July to uplift that trio that Olombe Brath always taught us was the class of 1925, and some other things that we're looking forward to. Hopefully, we want to pull together an anthology, some creative work for Malcolm Centennial, and just a lot to do. Every fourth Sunday, we will be in this virtual space. The next one will be, and we will share this at the end of the broadcast, will be on February 23rd. We will bring back Baba Zach Kondo because February 21st will be the 60th anniversary of the still sinister and haunting anniversary of Malcolm's assassination. February 21st, we will be at the Shabazz Center in the evening, as we have been for recent years with our sister Ilyasa Shabazz. May 19th will be as May 19th has always been. It will be with our annual pilgrimage to the grave site. That will be approaching year 60. It will be with our comrades from the December 12th movement shutting down 125th Street for what we now call a commercial moment of silence on May 19th. And there's some other things that are in the we've lost some time by virtue of our tech struggles. We apologize for that. So we're going to just jump right in. I'm going to do a brief libation statement for some of those ancestors that I just named, and we'll go to work. So for the north, the south, the east, the west, we say Ibaye, Ashe, Ibaye, Ashe, Ibaye, Ashe. Last year was a heavy year. We lost two folks very dear to us. I mentioned Joan Gibbs, one of our founders, and then one of our people's lawyers. For Joan Gibbs, we say Ibaye, Ashe, Ibaye, Ashe, Ibaye, Ashe. Sekou Udinga, one of the most feared and respected of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, and the husband of our outgoing chair, Dequi Kioni Siddiqui. Long live Sekou Udinga. We say Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe. Our last effort to do a stream conversation, we got zapped because the stream did not go to our respective pages. And right after that, it landed on my page. I got zapped by the powers that be, right? Oh, Mr. K from London, England, checking in. We see you, son. Right on, right? This is a Pan-African affair when we're talking about Malcolm. This is beautiful, right? But we got zapped. It was a beautiful discussion, the faith of Malcolm X, that featured Bilal. And we lost Bilal just a minute ago. His memorial will be on the 23rd. Earlier in the day, we will be having a reparations conversation for the third installment of Revolutionary Fourth Sundays with Omali Yeshitela and Roger Wareham. Speaking of whom, Viola Plummer. We lost Viola Plummer on January 15th this last year, right? And Viola, we can't talk about the reclaiming of Malcolm in recent years on the streets of New York without talking about the battle to save the Autobahn. Our shared struggle to put pressure on Spike Lee not to butcher Malcolm's legacy for the commercial fathers. And the shutting down of 125th Street, something we made a tradition. For Viola Plummer, we say Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe. Malcolm lost a daughter, Malika Shabazz, tragically a little while ago, right? Before her time, heartbreaking. For Malika, we say Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe. For his incredible parents, Louise Langdon Norton Little, Bad Garvey from Grenada, and there's a Malcolm X Foundation in Grenada that we're trying to contact and get with pretty soon. His father, Earl Little, killed by the Black Legionnaires in Detroit in 1931, who built that home, that their last home that they lived in together with his own hands. That kind of a black man. That's the kind of parents that Malcolm comes. So for Earl and Louise Langdon Norton Little, we say Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe. And for his big sister, the underappreciated and unsung Ella Collins, a bad black woman and Black Power Boston in her own right. And she was the one who put the legs financially under those legendary trips of abroad. She always had her little brother's back. And she was a force in Black Boston for many years. For the late, great Ella Little Collins, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Betty Bahia Shabazz. Once we finally turned that struggle around to save the Audubon, Betty came forward with a vision for how to reclaim it and to make it something that the community can embrace in an ongoing way. Is now the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Educational Center. And then there's been a big redo of the space recently. So if you haven't been there in a while, it's going to look a lot different. We're going to have a much bigger flow when you come back. So Dr. Betty Bahia Shabazz, we say Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe. And then, of course, for our revolutionary father, Imam Omowale, Malcolm X, we say Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe. And I want to thank everybody that's coming. Everybody's been patient with us. I want to thank folks, our team that's working with us. Grace Birch, right, has been with us for quite a few years now. And just joining us, Rafisa Shahabuddin, a teaching legend in Newark, New Jersey, teaches at Shabazz High School. Shabazz, Newark, New Jersey, right? Rafisa, I appreciate you, and I really appreciate you coming in to help us. Today's special guests are two long-distance runners of struggle who are both huge in my own development and have been huge in the advance and the perpetuation and the carrying on of Malcolm's legacy in a way that we need that to happen. Great Bill Sales gave us from civil rights to Black liberation. Malcolm X in the Organization of Afro-American Unity, co-convener of the epic Malcolm X Speaks in the 90s conference. And my big brother Sam Anderson. Sam and his beloved queen and comrade Rosemary Milley had their hands on me since my 20s in a way that's been huge, that I hugely appreciate. Black Panther Party, SNCC, and so many other formations. Probably best known for his Black Holocausts for Beginners, but he's been a long distance run on so many fronts. And Sam, I appreciate you being here and always being the grounding force that you have been for so many. A lot has happened since the 90s. That was hip hop was fighting for its soul. We were in between the golden age and the gangster era, right? It was the days of George Bush, the Daddy Bush, and it was the beginning of the special period. Cuba, right? We were all together in Cuba just last year, and Cuba is back in the news again for all the right and wrong reasons because of this backwards blockade. Right, and we're going to talk about all that. We're going to get into some of all of that as we get on today. Stan, there's a lot I want to cover with you. Bill, there's a lot I want to cover with you. I want you each just to give some opening thoughts. Right, Bill, how's your sound? Can we hear you? Can you hear us? We can't hear him still. Sam, you go ahead.
No, I mean, say something, Bill. You hadn't said anything.
He did.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
He doesn't hear us.
Yeah, he can hear us, but I don't think we can hear him. This is really a problem. I don't know why that is.
It's strange. Very strange. Very strange. Can you hear us, Bill? Yes or no? Can you hear us?
Yeah. No, he can't hear us at all.
Wow.
This is really
something. And there's nothing, Zaid, you can do on your end to get him unmuted.
I don't know what to do. You go ahead and do your open remarks. I'm gonna see if he can go in and come back out. Go out and come back in, rather.
Yes, sisters and brothers, I'm glad everybody is here in spite of the technical difficulties. This, as Brother Zaid had pointed out, this is the 100th anniversary of the birth of Brother Malcolm, and a lot is going on across the country as well as internationally. One of the things that I think people should try to keep up with is Brother Abdullah Kalimat is working on a number of different aspects of this centennial, and you should try to stay in touch through brothermalcolm.net. Brothermalcolm.net will have a lot of the information there. There are a number of very important events that are happening across the country, and I think it's important that in this crazy ass period that we
I don't know why you
bring up Brother Malcolm and his legacy.
So you should do it in a different browser. See if that'll help. Okay. All right. All right.
Are we still
You're
on?
Fine, Sam. You're fine.
Oh, okay. Because I heard you talking. You know. The one very important thing I wanted, or two important things I wanted to point out about Brother Malcolm in the last few months of his life. He spent a lot of time trying to build a united front in Harlem, or I shouldn't say Harlem, in New York City, a Black United Front in New York City. Once he was finally out of the Nation of Islam and forming the Organization of Afro-American Unity, and which Brother Bill can speak more on this also. The period of, I would say, October from, let's say, October of 1964 or September, October 1964 to January, February of 65, he was trying to really create this organization of Afro-American unity in at its base, both in New York City and elsewhere in the country. And one of the things that the late Brother Bill Epton said was that he did not go to the Audubon on February 21st because he was setting up his office, the Progressive Labor Party office, which is located on Lenox Avenue, now Malcolm X Boulevard, and 126th Street, above Sylvia's Restaurant. He was setting up the meeting of space because Brother Malcolm wanted to get as many of the Black community organizers on various levels to come together and have a discussion about him possibly running for city council. And that was that meeting that was supposed to be that meeting scheduled that evening. Obviously, we know now that the FBI, CIA, New York City Police Department, all the intelligence folk knew that was about to happen, and that could not happen. And so the place, the assassination process was put in place. And we know that Reverend Galamison and a number of other community organizers, activists, and so forth got phone calls either that night before or that morning. Do not go to the Audubon from unknown, quote unquote, unknown sources. So this is something that we need to finally, pull together and document. And it's going to be difficult, I think, to get the final documentation of it, but because there's so many people who were around that time who are no longer with us, right? To get this kind of verification. And we also know how jacked up the FOI IA stuff, the Freedom of Information Act stuff can happen. But I think it's important for the younger generation to understand that Brother Malcolm was beginning to enter another arena of struggle, and that was in the realm of electoral politics. He was not abandoning the non-electoral politics activism. He was beginning to incorporate the electoral politics activism within the Organization of Afro-American Unity.
As an insurgent.
Right, exactly.
That should be real clear. We're not talking about nobody falling into the trap of the crack of the behind of the Democratic Party.
Exactly.
We are not talking about that.
Right.
We're talking about as insurgents.
Right.
Drive the question of the United Front locally. And we should also add, and Sam, we're going to have Zach Kondo next month for Revolutionary Fourth Sunday, right? There was an Afro-Asian summit due to happen late that month in China that Malcolm to go to. So the timing that was February 21st was quite deliberate and quite
absolutely.
Now, Sam, I'm gonna stay with you for a minute because it's something that you don't get a chance to talk about enough. But it was SNCC was the point of pivot of the ideological shift of the Black liberation movement from civil rights to Black liberation, as Bill documents in his book. You were a part of that pivot in what was known as the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, from whence we get the Black Panther. You were in the midst of that, right?
Right.
We need you to share that. We got a whole new generation that has not that has not heard in a first-hand way. I want to acknowledge Thomas Muhammad, who did a film that included some of that, right? But I wish he had done more squarely on that because it's a story that's underappreciated. Tell that story from you got with it.
Absolutely. I was a student at Lincoln University from 1962 to 1966. Lincoln in Pennsylvania, not Missouri, in Pennsylvania. And one of the things that I wound up getting involved in as an activist was SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And in 1964, 63, 64, SNCC had created the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which was in collaboration with the more liberal forces within the Democratic Party nationwide. And long story short, the promise was made that at the convention in New Jersey in 1964, that the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party would be seated as the legitimate representation of Mississippi, as opposed to the racist Democratic Party, all-white Democratic Party. That was an agreement made between SNCC and Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and the National Democratic Party. President Johnson then said, "Oh, hell no, this ain't gonna happen." Kicked them out. Fannie Lou Hamer was seated, and she insisted, along with SNCC, that they are representative, but they would. Long story short, they got kicked out. Now, SNCC learned from that. They had a retreat. They learned from that. They learned that the Democratic Party is racist, hypocritical. We cannot work within them. We have to organize our own party. We have to organize our own party in the South, in the grassroots community. And that was an agreement from the retreat. And then the question was, where do we start this organizing? Where's the first place that would be an ideal place? Lowndes County, Alabama, SNCC felt was the ideal place in 1965, 66, because it was 80% Black and it had a proximity to Tuskegee, which meant that you can recruit students to help do the organizing in the area. So they found a winning organization within Lowndes County called the Lowndes County Christian Organization, and that organization was morphed into the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. And at some point in 1965, there was a brainstorming session at the little office in Lowndes County that SNCC had set up about how do we counter the symbol of the racist Democratic Party, which was the rooster. How do we counter that? And it was brainstorming, and finally somebody came up with the idea of a Black Panther, because Panthers, when cornered, they fight back, right? And it resonated with all the young folks. Because you remember now, SNCC is young. All the young folks there say, yeah, that's a great idea. We do, Panther thing. And so that's how the symbol of the Black Panther came into being, starting in Lowndes County, Alabama, in 1965. And by May of 66, Malcolm is assassinated. Many of us were members of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, also members of SNCC. And then there were other members of the clandestine organization called Revolutionary Action Movement, came together in May of 66 in Harlem and said that what was going on and developing in a positive manner in Alabama is something that we should replicate in the urban settings with the urban flavor. Long story short, and so we said yes. We all agreed that we should try to form a Black Panther Party and develop that across the country. So that was May of 66. By July of 66, we had come together and pulled together from the various positions within the Organization of Afro-American Unity a 10-point program. And we chose 10-point program because it was a biblical reference, the 10 Commandments, if you will. So 10-point program. And then we shared that with our allies all across the country, through various networks, that cultural networks, political networks across the country in terms of Black folk. And so we had various formations. I'm not going to go into details on it, but eventually the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense out in San Francisco came into being. So the legacy of Brother Malcolm lived through our work in creating the Black Panther Party and merging the activism and the spirit that came out of the student movement with the various urban struggles that had evolved in that period. Because you remember now, the Watts Rebellion occurred in 1965. The Harlem Rebellion occurred in 1964. And so there was an entirely different mindset for developing among young Black folk across the country. You're on mute.
So, yeah, excellent, excellent,
I don't
excellent.
know. Bill is on mute right now. I see he's
Yeah,
on mute. He might be able to unmute
you're getting a
himself.
little background. I just want to get him out. Let me bring him in. I muted you. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Now, Bill, you heard that, right?
Yeah.
Some interest that we wanted, we need to find one. We definitely need to find Bill Upton's papers, and I also want to acknowledge the fact that Bill Upton was also one of the Statue of Liberty for something that was underappreciated too, that helped compromise Malcolm's security. The great Walter Bowe, who was also a founding member of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee, with us, a martial art legend, was the I would say the prime target of that, because Mr. Bowe he'll take you out of here with his hands and his feet. That needs to be acknowledged. It's something I tried to share with our folks who killed Malcolm X. They didn't really know what to do with it, unfortunately. But it resurfaced recently as Shabazz family is trying to put forward this trial. Bill, I have been trying to cultivate among younger scholars the need to try and come together in the way that you brought us together back in the early 90s. And that's talking to some fascinating young people. I had been back and forth with Kahindi Andrews in Britain. We've had some folks who were with us when we were in Cuba together. What would you say to younger scholars very interested in our radical tradition, centering that with Malcolm on how to build on what we've done and where to go? He's on. Did he?
Okay. Thanks, Zaid. I'm having still a little bit of trouble with the audio, but you all are coming through barely, and I can kind of pick things up, and I'm coming through clear. Good. Back at the end of the 80s, Malcolm had been forgotten by many, many Black folks and had never been clearly introduced to the young generation of that period. And it was the need to rectify that era that led to the flurry of activity around the Malcolm X work group, which culminated in an international conference held in Havana, Cuba in the spring of 1990. Rosemary Mealy was very instrumental in getting the Cubans to host that. And in the fall of that very same year, a huge conference in New York City dedicated to resurrecting for that new generation of African Americans the image, the example, and the lessons of Malcolm X. Since that time, I think that certainly a larger and larger number of our people have made contact with Malcolm. Despite that, not nearly enough of them have. And particularly our youngest generation, now coming to adulthood, is facing one of the severest challenges that any Black people have faced on this continent over the last 250, 300 years. And they're going to need a much more detailed understanding of what Malcolm was about and the challenges that Malcolm was raising for us to confront. Because in many ways, although chronological time has moved forward, we've actually gone backward in terms of the time that we associate with social change and social revolution. And that's why Malcolm becomes particularly important today, and very much important for young scholars to cut their teeth on his thinking and his example as an entree into a much bigger tradition, which is the Black radical tradition. Thought, thinking, intellectual analysis is crucial to revolutionary transformation. If you don't know what happened before, you won't know how to go forward. If you don't know, or if you haven't summarized our previous struggles, you're going to make the same mistakes over and over again. if you don't know Malcolm, and in fact, you should know Malcolm better than we do. If you don't know Malcolm, you're going to make some mistakes that we may not be able to recover from. So it's absolutely crucial that we begin to reach our scholars and tell them that it's important to do things like spending a whole year of concentrated study of Malcolm X. But what's more important, to test his insights in the crucible struggle, confirm what works, and revise what doesn't. This is not going to be possible without a very detailed encounter with Malcolm X, the theoretician and the thinker.
Let me I have in my hand, I want everybody to see this because I want to encourage this very dear scholar to, we got to figure out how to get it back in print. Y'all see that? That's Bill's book, Malcolm X, For Civil Rights to Black Liberation, Malcolm X and the Organization of Afro-American Unity, right? Still with us in his 80s now also. Nobody's getting younger. Obata Shaka, right? The political legacy of Malcolm X. On the younger side, young man who we in Cuba with, I've been trying to track down, Richard Benson, who's tried to study the impact of Malcolm at one particular university. Something just I put in my hands that I'm finding a good read. And this is not about a young black scholar. This is a young white scholar. Patrick Parr, Malcolm Before X. And just those few chapters alone, he's done better than Manning Marabell ever did, right? And there are others. Garrett Felber's Those Who Know Don't Say. So, I mean, just some things that are in the air coming from younger scholars. And they also wanted to lift up an anthology. As this young sister was working with the Shabazz Center. We're going to try and bring her into one of these conversations. Naja Zigby Johnson, Mapping Malcolm, where she did an anthology of some younger scholars and some younger artists, including Kemi Kuchiyama, the granddaughter of our beloved Yuri Kuchiyama, right? So I wanted to just start there. But now, as we talk now, have this conversation today, the world as Malcolm knew it, particularly on the international stage, is on fire. Malcolm loved the Sudan. We do that annual pilgrimage in the gravesite. We see those young men in white representing his spiritual tradition, his spiritual practice. That comes from the Sudan. Malcolm was deeply impressed with the spirituality and the devotion of Muslims who look just like us in the Sudan, the oldest black real estate on the earth, right? Congo, we lose Patrice Lumumba at the top of the 1960s, right? Sitting on top of the richest real estate on earth, trying to take that into his own hands. And the struggle for independent integrity of the Congo is like no other, and the whole Eastern province is up in fire, right? And that's a headache for the entire African world. You know, it's an important space of solidarity that needs to be lifted up. Then, of course, there is Gaza, in live stream. We are witnessing a full-fledged genocide in our face and out of our behinds with our pocketbook, because this is all with you, a whole lot of U.S. money. And as this country continues its dangerous shift to the right, this fascist step forward under the lunatic that is Donald Trump and the right and the backwards sector of the ruling class and the right wing that he represents, he's not talking about any kind of ceasefire. He's talking about finishing the job. What is finishing the job, right? The creation of that greater Israel, the total displacement of as many Palestinians as they possibly can, so they can take that land, which is believed to be rich in gas and oil, by the way. So the question of solidarity, why that's so critically important, right? How Malcolm embodied that. He was with to Jerusalem and to Gaza, 59 and 64. He was one from his generation that pointed the way to us with Black and Palestinian solidarity. each of you, as we begin to wind our conversation down, why is the madness of the international stage, right? The madness of this right-wing shift in the country right now. Why is the question of Malcolm's solidarity, or his model of solidarity, his inspirational example solidarity, why is that so important to a new generation of organizers? Bill, you go ahead. You go ahead, because
I was just looking
your
very
mic is
quickly
live. You
for
go
a
ahead.
quote out of Malcolm's own words as to why it's important.
Yes, sir.
Let me see.
But that's I want to say that I'm proud of so many young folks who reflect the spectrum of what this country looks like: black, brown, and white, right? Muslim, non-Muslim, Jewish, who have bravely come out against the genocide in Palestine, facing the repression. That's before Trump. The repression of the state, including right here in New York City with this corrupt Mayor Adams sicking the police on students in New York, right? Like a dog, and like their dogs, but have stood up and continued to protest. We salute that. We embrace that. We appreciate the solidarity that we do see in places like Cuba, as Biden plays game and takes Cuba off the terrorist list for a minute, only for Trump to put him back on it, to put Cuba back on it. And in spite of that, Cuba's resilience has been incredible. Bill, you find your quote?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me just run it real quick. Malcolm said, "The person who realizes the effect that things all over the world have right on his block, on his salary, on his reception or lack of reception into society, immediately becomes interested in things international. But if a person's scope is so limited that he thinks things that affect him are only those things that take place across the street or downtown, then he's only interested in things across the street and downtown. But when you find those of us who have been following the nationalistic thinking that prevails in Harlem, we don't think of ourselves as a minority, because we don't think of ourselves just within the context of the American stage or the American scene in which we would be a minority. We think of things worldly, or as the world is. We think of our part in the world, and we look upon ourselves not as a dark minority on the white American stage, but rather we look upon ourselves as part of the dark majority who now prevail on the world stage. And when you think like this, automatically, when you realize you are part of the majority, you approach your problem as if odds are on your side rather than odds are against you. You approach demanding rather than using the begging approach. That's Malcolm.
Straight ahead. Yes, it is. Straight ahead. And I want to shout out my little brother Kevin from across the big pond, chiming in from London. We see your insights, Kevin. We say right on. We appreciate that. And we're talking about neo-colonialism. We're talking about these puppets that are on the continent today. But there is a surgence, however. There is an insurgent territory on the continent. We got to lift up what's happening in the land of Sankara, Burkina Faso, Chad, Nigeria. There is the Sahel. Those states, there's some hot stuff going on. They're telling France to hell with France, like Malcolm said many years ago, back in the message to the grassroots, right? So, we always got to follow the light, but we also have to be studious, tell no lies, claim no victories. We do not want any new losses that we can avoid by being as studious and prepared as possible. Y'all were both right on some of that. Sam, what are your thoughts? What do you got to say to young folks about the importance of solidarity and looking at the world stage as critically as we need to?
Absolutely. We're in a major shift in economic power, political power on a global scale, with the creation of BRICS, the alignment has shifted. This was something I think initially conceived of at the Bandung conference in 1957, Bill? Was 57?
Bandung there were two of them, 55 and 57.
Right, yeah. And the whole concept of how does the majority of the world, which are people of color, how does that majority get out from under the capitalist imperialist West, in a broad sense? And it took what, 70 years or more, and then we see the formation of BRICS, and with all of its warts, right, with gangster capitalist Russia being part of it and all that, all of its warts, it's beginning to have a powerful impact on the dominance of the Western capitalist forces. And Malcolm was very much aware of this effort, and we have to be very much aware of the contemporary realities of this effort, and with for example, with Cuba formally becoming part of BRICS, the whole question of the U.S. blockade against Cuba now has a whole different perspective, right? Because eventually, all things being equal,
yes, sir.
The Cubans will not have to be dependent on the U.S. dollar and all of the blockades, restrictions, and so forth and so on down the line, right? And that's eventually a release or a relief for the Cuban people, but that's going to take some time. I don't think that's going to happen in 2025 or 2026. But the whole concept of the Bandung reality is coming into fruition, and Brother Malcolm understood that potential back then, and Bill can contest to this. He talked about that, right?
That's right.
He talked about the political economy of the third world shifting out of being a dependent aspect of Western imperialism.
Former colonial law, yes, sir.
Colonialism, post-colonialism. The war in Vietnam was essential in highlighting that.
Well, he introduced it into the struggle. He was able to bring it center stage.
Right.
And that meant that other leadership had to respond to him.
Right.
When he was able to bring that along with Foreman into the consciousness of SNCC, then that meant that King in his debates with young sick people, he had to respond to it, right? And then he takes the center stage, and then it becomes not just an analysis; it becomes a social force. You see, just one thing I want to mention very briefly. Once Mao Zedong said, capitalism is a paper tagger. And I think Stalin was still alive. It might have been Khrushchev. Wasn't Stalin. Khrushchev said, yeah, they're a paper tagger, but they have atomic teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of highlights the contradiction also that we now face in this sense. You have a rotten, dying system, right? That can continue to exist only through massive genocidal violence. And that's just the rub. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That they have the capability of taking a whole lot of people down with them. And so we have to really recognize that we have to win this. That's right. You know what I mean? We have to win, because if we don't win, they won't win, but they can destroy everything on the way down. if you understand what I mean.
Planet.
You know?
The whole planet.
That's what makes it so dangerous. It's not just Trump. Trump is the front man for a particular ruling class thinking that says that the liberal welfare state of the Roosevelt era has failed, right? Therefore, we have to return to the mechanisms of the primitive accumulation of capital, which are all violent, you know?
Right.
We have to keep people under control through terror, physical terror, and genocide, right?
That's right.
Right.
And usually when that change comes, that's called fascism, of course, right?
Right.
When that change comes, it comes rapidly. And some people keep talking about, well, we're going to sue him in the courts and, you know, this kind of stuff. And the dude is sending stormtroopers to the front door. You talking about call the ACLU? I'm not telling you not to call them, but I mean, you got a much bigger problem than whether you can make the case in court at this particular point in time. Right? They just completed the genocide. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this and got the nerve to talk about, you know, what they're going to do for Gaza and everything. You know, they got plans for the rehabilitation of Gaza, the repopulation of Gaza with Zionist colonialists. You know, at least as a result of the 60s, people could not in the ruling class just get up and say we're going to commit some genocide and repopulate someplace, right? But now they got the dudes at the headquarters of imperialism, right? Mumbling this stuff among the other crazy things that he says. And they're crazy enough to mean it, right?
Right.
So, you know, we call them now. They've raised us, right? Can we raise them, right? This is the real issue. And the last thing I'll say is Malcolm, even in his time, had to confront this. Because he said, you know, you can't be talking about a revolution if you can't convince the opposition that you're willing to pay the price. Right?
Right.
And then somebody said, well, Malcolm, what is the price? He said, the price of freedom is death. Right? These cats are willing to die to keep us oppressed. Are we willing to die for freedom? It's just that simple.
Exactly.
Tell no lies, claim no easy victories.
That's right.
As we wind down, one of the things that we did not do, and I will close the show with it, right, is we usually begin with our political prisoner spotlight. The tech issues really threw us off and we lost about a good 15, 20 minutes. We apologize again for that. We should have that figured out come February when we bring Zach Kondo in, right? So we will definitely do that. I want each of you to think, think about some closing remarks. Sam, you were in Cuba just a minute ago. You reconnected with Baba Tony Vandermeer, my Babalao. That was good to hear that. And as we round up the decade, the International Decade of People of African Descent, and there's a fresh call for a second decade, right? And Cuba was right in the middle of that. That was so poetic. I so wanted to be there for that, and I regret that I couldn't. It really speaks to how pivotal Cuba has been, and then how that brings, the broad spectrum of solidarity as we know it, and then the solidarity that we need to build in order to move forward. So each of you consider take a minute, some closing remarks, and then I'll take us out with a tribute to Imam Jamil.
Right.
Now, before I do that, go, Sam. Go. I'm sorry.
Briefly, as you may or may not know, the president Diaz-Canel, the Cuban president Diaz-Canel, paid tribute to Malcolm at the Malcolm X Bailey Shabazz Center.
Yes, he did.
In 2023. And he talked about at that, he came to the center and he talked about how Malcolm, when he was a high school student in Cuba, one of the required readings was the autobiography of Malcolm X, and how that was a transformative thing for himself. And you know, how Malcolm, the legacy of Malcolm, you know, resonated with him through his life, and he felt that it was important as a Cuban to come to Harlem and pay tribute to Malcolm. That was a very powerful thing that the Western bourgeois media, you know, was like cognitive dissonance. What?
Sam, in the land of hip hop, we call that a mic drop.
Right. And you know, and they just they couldn't handle it. They just didn't understand the African roots of in Cuba transcends color, right?
Yes.
I remember when I don't know if Bill was there or not. I remember when Diaz-Canel came into Riverside Church, when there was a big rally, and the sister drummers were drumming. He came, he bowed to them, and started playing on the drums, right? And so, like in Western media, this is a quote unquote white guy who's drumming. they just didn't, you know, they couldn't figure that out. But let me just
told us what
let's say that the Malcolm is an essential component, spiritual, political, cultural component embedded within Cuban culture, manifested by the monument that both of you all talked about. I posted in the local chat the video that we did where the one of the most unique monuments on the planet is paying tribute to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Denmark Vesey and Nat Turner, right? In Havana, in Havana. You know, so you know it shows the unbelievable power of the Black liberation struggle coming out of the United States, and I think also the recent development, a documentary called Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat.
Oh, yes.
A most important piece that people, you know, activists among our folks should see, because that also brings in Brother Malcolm into the international scale, particularly in reference to Patrice Lumumba and the horrendous assassination of him. So, you know, we have a lot of material that we can share with the younger generation. That,
Yes.
as Bill said, you know, to move our movement forward, and see as a central component, as a incentive and political spiritual leader. Brother Malcolm is as being a component of that, through all of these different references, cultural references, books, videos, you know, you name it. You know, we need to get that out there as an inspiration in these fascist times.
Indeed. And you know, Bill, go ahead. You go ahead and jump in. Then
Yeah.
I want to close out.
What I would suggest any young people want to go further at this point with Malcolm, to go to abdulalkalimat.com and see probably the best 4 videos that I've ever seen produced as an introduction to Malcolm, both his life and as a thinker and theoretician, along with some very good participation of other young as well as older intellectuals. There are 4 of those presentations. In addition, you should be able to access at abdulalkalimat.com a bibliography that includes all of the scholarly articles in the U.S. written about Malcolm over the last 10 years.
Net. Right? Brother Malcolm.
Well, you have brothermalcolm.net. That's the basic one. But Abdul has on his own personal website the Malcolm X 100 material, right? Yeah. And that's where he has these beautiful introductory programs on Malcolm, which includes his opening presentation of about 45 minutes, and then some extensive discussion that includes people from a number of different viewpoints. For instance, Maulana Karenga participated actively in all four of those discussions, and some of his approaches to Malcolm come from a different, perspective, and the interaction and the discussion, I think, would be of benefit to younger people, who are trying to find a way into Malcolm. The last place not the last place to go, but the last thing I should say, go to YouTube, put in Malcolm X, and just sit there and look at everything and get this creepy feeling like, is this man still alive? Is he speaking to the contemporary situation? Is anybody alive today, right, in 2025, who's speaking to 2025 the way a dead man from 1965 is speaking to 2025? It's really amazing.
Powerful. Right. That's powerful. Transcendent figure that he is. Bill, we want you to put that in the chat. We'll call it my updated webpage. I haven't seen his page. I'm getting some of the emails. I haven't seen his page. Sam, we're going to put the blast from the Park in Havana, Monument Park in Havana. We're going to put that on both of our pages right after this particular gathering and look them up. Right?
It's akalimat.org. Just akalimat.org.
Is it .org? Not .org?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just akalimat.org. Right. Mm-hmm. That's what it is.
Yeah, so I want to appreciate you both. What I'm going to do for the Imam, Arun Kanani just was visited Imam Jamil recently. Imam is in a terrible spot. Some of you have seen that picture with that growth on his jaw, right? That growth has grown, right? It's worse. He is yet to be given the medical transfer that he should have gotten. He is now 82 years old, right? And, we're not going to sit by and let him be lost to the clutches of We're talking about your comrade in SNCC, right, Sam?
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. Young man who stood squarely on the shoulders of both streams of this work, coming out of Louisiana, right? Being bold with that shift to the left with SNCC, right? So feared.
Take no prisoners.
As a young man, what is the last Civil Rights Act? The H. Rap Brown Act. You going across state lines, raising hell? We might knock you up, and that pushed him underground.
Right.
I'm right now. I just got to go on him and I'll take us out with this. Right? Wound up going inside, captured in 1970, and dug into Malcolm's spirituality. And when he came out in the tradition of how Black men and Muslims, as Muslims do, came out waking up and cleaning up and standing, showing people how to wake up, clean up, and stand up, particularly in a rundown west ward of Atlanta, and found himself being a fresh target all over again and framed for the killing of a Fulton County deputy and the shooting and wounding of another, even though everybody knows that Mr. Otis Jackson, y'all remember that name, Google that, was the perpetrator of that particular crime. Let me just read this and I'm going to take us out with this. I want everybody to go to Imam
and don't forget Brother Peltier.
Free at last.
Of Brother Peltier. Right.
Free at last. We have Mumir's commentary on Leonard's release on our page, right?
Great.
49 years we faced with Leonard, and Biden dragged that out into the very last
minute.
I don't want y'all to get happy and say, well, see, it's a good day. No. That was a consequence of decades of pressure.
That's right.
Decades.
Right. Absolutely true.
Our comrades from the indigenous community walking from from Sioux Nation, all Lakota Nation, all the way to DC, right? All kinds of work has been done over the years to free Leonard Peltier, and it finally came to bear. But let me just get this off and we will wrap up, right? Early this month, I was able to visit Imam Jamil El-Amin, formerly H. Brown, at the federal prison in Tucson, Arizona. Imam Jamil is one of the great political activists of the Black and Islamic movements. Most people have never heard of him. If they have, they're usually surprised to discover that he's still alive. His imprisonment is designed to make the world forget about him, and it has largely succeeded. Last time I met with him was in August 2021, when I was able to spend 2 days in the Tucson prison interviewing him for the biography I am writing. Last year, I applied to visit him again, hoping I would not have to repeat the long, drawn-out legal process I had to go through to meet with him the first time. But the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and we were in D.C. last Friday turning the volume up at the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The Federal Bureau of Prisons only allowed me to do another visit after the Cornell University Law School and Arizona State Law School First Amendment clinics threatened to go to court to say that blocking my visits was a violation of my constitutional rights. In any case, I landed in Arizona. I thought that everything had been agreed and I'd be able to spend 4 hours recording Imam Jamil, speaking about his life. I was expected to learn about the medical neglect he is experiencing. He's 81 years old. He's actually 82 now. And he had various health issues over the years of his incarceration, including multiple myeloma, right? But recently, a photo of him emerged showing a large swelling on his face that the prison was refusing to treat. When I got to the prison, 2 unexpected things happened. Firstly, I was told by the correction officer that I was not allowed to record Imam Jamil. That meant I wasn't able to get a recording of him talking about his medical situation, which would have been powerful to galvanize support for him to receive proper treatment. I assume that was exactly why the warden didn't want me to record the conversation. Second, on my second day with him, I found out that he had in fact been taken to a hospital that morning. But instead of proper care, he received yet more abusive treatment. Someone attempted to pierce the swelling on his face by cutting it, hoping to drain the fluid, but that didn't work. So Imam Jamil was sent back to the prison with a bandage over the left side of his face, the swelling untreated and still without any diagnosis. You can't make this stuff up. He was in considerable pain, found hearing hard to swallow and beginning to cover his ear and could not swallow food. While I was with him, a prison guard gave him a nutritional shake, his only diet. No one should have to suffer this way. But for a man of Imam Jamil El-Amin's stature to be treated like this left me feeling enraged. I urge everyone reading this to support this campaign, calling for an emergency medical transfer of Imam Jamil to the Federal Medical Center at Buchanan, North Carolina, and for him to receive the immediate medical treatment there, right? And that should be on the link as well. That's Imam Jamil Action Network.org, and that report comes from Arun Kundanani, right? And we thank him for that, right? So we want to apologize again to everybody for the difficulties that we face. I wanted to shout out Duchess LaWanda. Duchess LaWanda is from the Malcolm St. Louis family on the Little side, and just call out some of their names: Mike Little, Tracy Little Lopez, Jarrell Little, Victor Little, Anthony Little, Wanda Little Johnson, Cheryl Little Berry, and Lamont Little, and May Little. Those are some of the family that was tuning in. I'm trying to get back to St. Louis. Sam and Bill, I want y'all to hear this. When we were doing our last recordings, I was trying to track down Alice Wyndham. At the time, Alice was the last living person to have been in Africa with Malcolm and helped form the Ghana chapter of the OAU. All those pictures of Malcolm in Ghana are Alice's pictures. And she slipped out of here to the Lord ancestors before I could get there. But in St. Louis, there is a griot museum right in the heart of the hood that she helped start that has her books and papers. I'm dying to get out there before the year ends, and to see what she left us, because just and Alice, for everybody's benefit, Alice Wyndham joined a number of scholars and organizers and teachers who joined Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana when Kwame Nkrumah made a drum call to the diaspora to help develop the educational institutions of the newly independent Ghana back in 1957. Alice answered that drum. She was incredible. I brought her to Newark years ago when I had the Malcolm X Ancestral Memory Project. Bill, we brought you for that. Just when you were getting your book together, right? She was a great queen mother. And I'm really hoping I can make that connect with her, with what she left us in St. Louis. So we will leave you now. Thank everybody for joining us. We will be back February 23rd, 3 p.m. with Baba Zach Kanto, right?
Du Bois's birthday.
That's right. And that'll be 2 days after we observe the 60th anniversary of the still haunting assassination of our Black shining prince. Our political prisoner focus will be on, of course, the father of Assata's only child, Kamal Siddiqui, right? The last New York Panther who's still in captivity, right? We will be lifting him up on that particular occasion as well. So follow us live, like and share us on Facebook. We're doing this also to drive up traffic on our YouTube page. I've been zapped. I've been zapped. Yes, Kevin, I have A. Peter Bailey's book. I've been trying to get hold of A. Peter Bailey, just as I've been trying to get hold of Baba Abdullah Kalimat to get him on here, because we appreciate what Abdul did in creating a network from his own perch, particularly on the intellectual front, to lift up all of so many things that so many of us should be doing to honor the centennial of our Black shining prince. We thank you, everyone. We thank everybody from our organization, Michael Ferguson, our treasurer, Herman Ferguson's son, right? Azukili, Brother Charles, from Sons and Daughters of Africa, right? One of James Small's cub, right? And Grace Birch, who's kept me sane for all the time that she has been with us, and a veteran of some housing efforts in this town that we definitely appreciate. And joining us today, Rafisa Shahabuddin, right? Teaching legend from Newark, New Jersey, teaching at Shabazz High School. We appreciate everybody for joining in. So hold February 23rd, February 21st, Shabazz Center, right? And stay tuned for so much that'll be going on, because we're going to be turning it up all year for the centennial of Malcolm X. X's and Malcolm is the answer. Thank you. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the whirlwind.
All right.